Hi, this is Ed Fitzpatrick. If you enjoy local politics as much as I do, be sure to join our friends at Rhode Island PBS for the show A Lively Experiment. Hosted by Jim Hummel, the weekly series features journalists, pundits, and politicians debating the stories and issues that matter most to us Rhode Islanders. Tune in to A Lively Experiment and be part of the conversation. Fridays at 7 p.m. on Rhode Island PBS and wherever you get your podcasts. From the Boston Globe, this is Rhode Island Report. I'm Ed Fitzpatrick. Welcome back to the podcast where we bring you big conversations from our very small state. A Rhode Island company that provides life-saving nutrition to children around the world is getting caught up in the Trump administration's dismantling of the United States Agency for International Development. Edesia Nutrition has been on a roller coaster of canceled contracts and late payments. The founder and CEO, Navyn Salem, says every hour the plant is closed means 415 starving babies aren't getting the food they desperately need. She's here to tell us more about what comes next. Navyn Salem, thank you for talking with us today.
Hi, Ed.
So just remind our listeners what Edesia does and where it is located.
So we're located in North Kingstown, Rhode Island, and we are a nonprofit that makes a fortified peanut butter that's used to treat malnutrition and is distributed all over the world through UNICEF, the World Food Program, and the agency formerly known as USAID.
I read that Edesia has sent food to 65 countries.
Yes.
Is that right? Give us some examples.
So places like where there's wars going on, like Sudan, troubled situations like Afghanistan, Yemen, Syria, Venezuela, even countries like Guatemala closer to home.
Your father, Fazli Datu, is here in the studio today. And am I right that he came to America from Tanzania after winning a USAID scholarship?
That's true. He was the first student from Africa to be able to come to the United States as a result of USAID. And so I was born here in this country because of that scholarship.
And do I understand correctly that it was a trip to Tanzania with him in 2007 that inspired you to do the work you're doing today?
Yes, for sure. So my family, many generations came from Tanzania. So this has always been a very personal journey. On top of that, at that time of that trip, my 4 daughters were all under the age of 5. And this is the population that Edesia deals with on a daily basis, is that under 5 population.
How much does Edesia rely on funding from the U.S. Agency for International Development? Everybody calls it USAID.
Yeah, so it can vary year to year, but last year it was 85% of our business. 85%.
So USAID has been one of the biggest targets so far of a campaign by President Trump and Elon Musk to slash the size of the federal government. They've basically dismantled USAID. How has that affected Edesia?
So we've been through a series of starts and stops. So it started almost immediately on January 29th. We had a stop work order. This was then rescinded a week later. Shortly after that, our contracts were terminated. 24 hours after that, they were turned back on. So the roller coaster has been nonstop. Our lines have been shutting down and then turned back on, trying to keep pace with the decisions that are being made. One of the biggest challenges for us right now has been that the payment system was shut down for a very long time. So only a couple of days ago on Friday did we get our first payments. These were for orders that we made last year.
You got paid for last year just the other day?
On Friday.
Oh, wow.
So $16 million came in on Friday, and some of these invoices were as old as October of last year.
And how about the current invoices? Like, are they...
So
how far behind are you?
Yeah, there's another $20 million of receivables that are waiting payment.
It sounds like chaos. How has that affected your ability to help the malnourished children that you help around the world?
So we're part of a supply chain that starts with American farmers. It then goes to us, the American manufacturers. It then gets on trucks that are run by also American trucking companies, and then onto ships that go all around the world and rely on implementing partners, many who are headquartered in the United States as well. If you take any one piece of this supply chain out, the entire system crumbles. We all depend on each other. And so the payment systems and the contract terminations have been going on and off for each of us at different times. So this means we have product everywhere. We have product in country. We have product on the water, on a ship. We have product here in Rhode Island in warehouses. We have product in New York in warehouses and in our factory here as well. So every part of this is being delayed. Every hour that this factory is down means 415 children will not get the life-saving food that they need. That's an entire box of what we call plumpy nut that's needed to fully rehabilitate a child in about 8 weeks. And so those numbers are mounting very quickly and translate very directly to lives lost.
Can you bring us up to date on where things stand with USAID? It sounds like that agency is being dismantled. I mean, is there anyone around to process your payments?
That's a great question. So USAID started with 14,000 employees. They were reduced to 700. And as of last week, the remainder of those 700 people are going to be terminated. These terminations will happen between April 20th and September 1st, with the majority being July 1st. So on July 1st, USAID will be absorbed by the State Department, and 99% of those employees will be gone. So we're losing the institutional knowledge. These are very technical contracts. Humanitarian aid is very complicated in terms of all medicines and foods that are delivered around the world. So to have 0 employees means that we can do 0 work. So we are quite aware that there will be no future contracts for the remainder of the year as far as we can tell.
And what are the implications of that?
So we have another customer, UNICEF. And that's why I was in Copenhagen just until last week to talk about the importance of the work that we're doing in our partnership. And we also work with the World Food Program, which can also be another outlet for us to be able to continue to make orders for those 2 United Nations agencies.
So hopefully those 2 agencies would step up.
Yes.
Organizations would step up and do more than they have been. Yeah.
Yes.
Wow. We've written about how you were forced to lay off some of your employees. How many employees did you have to let go?
So we had to let go 16 of our staff, which is about 10% of our workforce. And these are people who worked with us for over 10 years. We're very close as a family. We know each other very well, and this was a very difficult decision to have to make. But with the amount of uncertainty going on still on a day-to-day basis, it's almost impossible to be able to run a business in a climate like this.
And I've met some of your employees. I know a lot of them are refugees. I mean, this must be a painful time for you and your team.
Yes, no matter who they are, it's very difficult. It creates a lot of instability for the team. But we are also resilient. We are hopeful because we really believe in the mission that we have. And we actually do think that the administration does also agree with the values of feeding children. This is a very, very important part, that we're one of the lucky few that were not canceled completely by the now State Department. Emergency food assistance is something that both Democrats and Republicans believe should continue. And the reason that food security is so important is because it translates directly to national security. If you're able to feed people in their homes, it lessens migration as well. People don't want to come here if they are able to survive on their own and they have food and shelter. So there's a lot of these soft power components to what we do that are critical. When we leave, I have already seen China stepping in and taking over on some of these really important projects that were what the American people stood for and I hope still stand for.
We'll have more with Navyn Salem after a quick break. When you want to go beyond the headlines, let me recommend Rhode Island PBS Weekly. Rhode Island PBS Weekly is an award-winning news magazine broadcast that gives you the full story, powered by investigative journalism and narrative storytelling. New episodes of Rhode Island PBS Weekly drop Sundays at 7:30 p.m. on Rhode Island PBS. Watch past episodes at ripbs.org/weekly. That's ripbs.org/weekly. And I hate to ask this, but with all this uncertainty, is there any chance Edesia might close as a result of this? What's the future look like?
I mean, I still believe that our mission ranks as one of the most important things that the U.S. government can continue to do. It's important for the farmers. We buy commodities from 25 different states. So we've got farmers in Kansas, California, North Carolina, Georgia, and all over the Northeast as well that are supplying us with hundreds of millions of dollars of peanuts, milk powder, sugar, vitamins and minerals that are critical to those states as well. And so I believe that we just need to keep fighting. The fight changes on a week-to-week basis, but we come with lots of ideas. And as a manufacturing company, we understand the need for more efficiency, and that's what we live and breathe. So in the past, we had given many ideas on how to be more efficient that really, to be honest, weren't listened to. And so we see this as an opportunity for a new team to listen to the new ideas that we have, make the system more efficient, and at the end of the day, that leads to treating more children with less dollars. The problem is, what is that wait time between breaking something and rebuilding it? This brings us to children who cannot wait. If any of our listeners have children, especially very young children, and you imagine that you have to wait until the politicians in D.C. figure out how to rebuild a $40 billion agency, at the same time trying to survive through a war in Sudan and struggling to feed their children, this is something that doesn't exactly sync very well. And so our job at Edesia is to find ways around the system while they're rebuilding. And that's why we've recently launched a fundraising campaign to keep our lines running, work directly with the nonprofits on the ground, like Save the Children, Action Against Hunger, other groups like that, who still can have direct access to children while the government figures out how the new systems are going to play out.
So, as you know, U.S. foreign aid spending was less than 1% of the annual federal budget before these cuts. In your view, is this a wise area to be cutting?
Absolutely not. I think there's always a very big misunderstanding. Many people will think it's 20% of the budget. And when we believe things like that, I can see why you would want to cut back on something like that. We are agnostic to geography, to politics, to any of that. At Edesia, our mission is to feed children. That can be here in the United States, and that can be halfway around the world. We feel that it's our obligation as humans, as representatives of humanity, to feed children no matter what their situation is. So this is some of the best use of funds that we can invest in, because if you have hungry people, these can turn into very violent, unstable situations. This is when people start to overthrow their governments. This has happened time and time again. Imagine if you are the parent of a child and a box comes to you from Rhode Island or Georgia with an American flag on it, and it says on the packet, "From the American people," and this packet saved your child's life. Do you think that you will ever forget that it was the American people that saved the life of your most precious child? It's impossible. So I cannot think of a better investment or a better way to spend money, and it costs pennies compared to what saving a life would be here in the United States. For $50, this can provide a treatment for an entire 8 weeks. That's an entire life that is saved. If you think even back to World War II, when there were people in Europe who were starving to death, they still talk about it to this day, that it was the American people that came over and provided boxes of food that gave them the sustenance to survive. That was a long time ago. So if we still remember the impact of the goodwill from World War II, I'm fairly certain that the goodwill that we're doing now will also be remembered that many decades later. This is something that we must continue doing in no uncertain terms.
Trump and Musk often talk about waste and fraud. What do you say to that?
I invite them to come and visit the factory. Every contract is a competitive bid. There are so many checks and balances from financial to quality to you name it. Everything is checked along the way. There's monitoring and evaluation to make sure as much of the product that we make makes it to the children who need it most. And while there's obviously room for improvement, and there definitely could be some waste along the way, there's definitely no fraud. And so our job is to look at the waste as an opportunity and find efficiencies that it can improve the system.
According to USAID, about 300 million people around the world needed humanitarian assistance last year. If the United States doesn't try to help those people, who's going to do it?
Yeah, so there's many, many countries and groups that believe in this as well. So I just came back from Paris where there was a Nutrition for Growth conference. This happens every 4 years, so it's a pretty significant event. The United States was not present, and they exceeded their goal and ended up raising $27 billion to go towards issues around nutrition. The EU stepped up with $3.4 billion. Other private philanthropies like the Gates Foundation, the Bezos family, the Child Investment Fund, Rockefeller, etc. So it's a mix of both countries standing up and private philanthropies to say, we will not let this happen.
I've heard you say that child hunger and malnutrition is a grave problem, but the solution is within reach. Do you feel like it's slipping away right now?
It is, but it's temporary. We are committed to fighting to maintain the work that we do. I'm headed to Washington tomorrow to continue to speak up about how important this issue is and understand that we actually do have a lot of supporters on this issue. We do. We've got to get through this time of disruption. It can be very painful to go through things like layoffs and lines shutting down, trucks stopped and turned around in the middle of the road, contracts broken with our peanut suppliers. It's very damaging to our relationships. It's damaging to our relationships overseas as well. But we have to find a way to maintain as much of this work as possible during this disruption. And there is the potential, believe it or not, to come out better on the other side. And so we've got to take this time to think differently, to turn the map completely upside down, look at things with a new lens. We cannot spend a minute complaining about what's going on, but focus exclusively on the future, on the solutions and the ideas that we have that need to be implemented now, not next month, not next year. Because when lives depend on the decisions that you make, you do not have time to waste.
What has it been like for you personally to go through all this chaos?
Well, I don't sleep as much anymore, for sure. But Edesia was built for a crisis. We are constantly dealing with crises. So whether it's COVID or it's Ukraine or it's a natural disaster that's hitting, this is what we're here for. And we have to be even more resilient in a time like this. And the 3 words on my door say, find a way. We must be the problem solvers in this equation. And we cannot get tired. We can't back down. And we have to continue to fight.
If listeners are frustrated with what's happening with Edesia, with USAID, what can they do about it?
100% now is the time that we need donations more than ever. So go to our website, donate, spread the word. We have to step up while we are in this disruption. I have no doubt that we can continue the work with as few interruptions as possible if we get the support from everyone around us.
Navyn Salem, thank you for joining us today.
Thanks, Ed.
Rhode Island Report is a production of the Boston Globe in collaboration with Rhode Island PBS. Today's episode was produced by Megan Hall. Audio mixing and mastering by Marissa Ewing of Hemlock Creek Productions. Our music is from APM. Be sure to follow us on Apple, Spotify, or wherever you listen. I'm Ed Fitzpatrick. See you next week. Looking to binge watch all your favorite PBS shows? You need Rhode Island PBS Passport. Masterpiece, Antiques Roadshow, Rhode Island PBS Weekly, and many more. Watch them all, anytime, and from any streaming device. Learn more about this member benefit at ripbs.org/passport. That's ripbs.org/passport.